if you bring in people who might say something, like Google, for example. You bring Google and it's very... Probably if Google says something interesting, valuable, it probably will be after that amplified by other people.
This is the Inbound4Cast, a podcast series about inbound marketing and organic growth for B2B companies. Here's your host, Gerald Arcus.
Anton, welkom in de podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah.
Yes.
Very exciting. Yeah, you it looks all so professional. So I'm excited. I've done a few, but usually just StreamYard or something like that, very simple one. And this looks okay. Let's do it.
Yeah, Riverside. I like the tool. We are talking today about influencer marketing for B2B companies in combination with webinars. You have a lot of experience with both, with influencer marketing and with webinars. But before we start, maybe you can start with a short introduction of yourself.
Yeah, okay, sure. My name is Anton Shulke, and currently I work for Duda. Duda is CMS, a website builder. I used to work for SEMrush for 5 years, and before that I used to work for some small, maybe nobody remember now, Ukrainian company. I'm from Kiev, but I'm in Spain right now because of the war. Yeah. So as I said, 5 years at SEMrush. And it's actually changed my perception and everything. And exactly there we decide we have a concept of this kind of constructed influencer marketing and making loyal audience or double tier loyal audience, which then I moved and I tried to use in Duda. And talking to B2B, SEMrush is not B2B. It could be B2B, could be B2C, but Duda as a website builder, which basically the main audience is agencies. So it's very, very B2B. Obviously, individuals can go and build sites on Duda, but if it's not site, you actually bring in your money, bring in your it's professional. So you might better off going to Wix and you will use free version. So if you want just one, you show them there. So we only marketing down to the agencies. So it's very, very B2B, which I didn't realize when I joined. I thought it's everyone can have a website, everyone can have a website, but we particularly work for B2B.
Yeah, and I think when you were working for SEMrush, your webinar experience was combined with the influencer part, right? Or was it already before that?
It was before that. I started doing. It was a funny story when I joined. When I went to. Okay, it's a long story. Basically, 2008. I used to have a bar, just where people drink, in Valencia, in Spain. Surprise, surprise, 2008, it's crash of everything. It's a crisis, no one has the money. In Spain, it was really horrible. Yeah. So I had to close it because, I had sometimes 4 other people come and sit all night long having only one gin tonic. You can't have a business this way. So I closed it. I decided to go to Kiev because I have some offer of doing business between Ukraine and Russia at that time. And then Maidan happened. And okay, now it's war between Ukraine and Russia. So at that time, it's all went down. And to cut a long story short, I went into marketing because of language ability. I do speak Spanish and English. I started working for a reasonably big Ukrainian, but very small in terms of international marketing company. And they did have a very much success of the business model was they were doing webinars. And after that, everyone who registers free webinars, everyone who registers for free webinars, they call them and say, do you want to take courses from us? This kind of things. And when I joined them, they decided, okay, we're going to go and conquist the rest of the world. So I start an English version of webinars. And I think it went very, very well. We had Google, we had I don't know, you name it. And if you look at SEO community, probably everyone who is a reasonably big figure, Barry Schwartz, Aleida Solis, Lily Ray, everyone.
Yeah, I saw a lot of big names on your LinkedIn profile of people who joined the webinar.
Yeah, and it was before SEMrush when actually no one knows us. So at that time, I realized it especially works for SEO people, less for PPC or content marketing, and less for just general marketers, but mostly for SEO. SEO people really want to speak out, really want to bring their ideas. And SEO people like to be in a company. So if you put in a webinar room, not like two people like we have in the podcast, like moderator and a guest, if you have put several guests and people kind of like each other reasonably and share their ideas and everything, usually SEO people really love it. So you can exploit it, and convert webinar to influencer marketing tool. Because obviously, Gerald, if we would sit somewhere in Valencia here or in Holland, where you are, and have a coffee and have a conversation, would be much better, wouldn't it? Of course it would.
Yep.
But it's impossible, or it takes enormous amount of resources because business is global. So today you have a guest from Valencia, tomorrow you might have a guest from Rio de Janeiro, who knows?
And what was the benefit for the influencers you asked to join the podcast? Is it that you have to pay them, or do they like the fact that they are being seen as a thought leader because they are a guest in the webinar, or what's the win for them?
Okay. We didn't pay, and full stop. And it was a really very important question because it's a Pandora box. You open it, you start paying, you have to pay absolutely everyone. You're not paying me here for doing this. No, exactly. it's what exactly I thought. I'm here. I'm still here. Why? Okay, because you never know. Maybe I will do a podcast with you, and tomorrow I'm very, very famous, and I got something out of it, or maybe not. But the fact that I can express myself and give some kind of a few ideas, and maybe someone uses ideas, it already is a good enough for me. It's very similar with webinars. Always you have to be kind of established. If nobody knows you, you're doing your first webinar, it will be very, very, very difficult to get a big figure. Even I managed to get Barry Schwartz and late Bill Slavsky when nobody knew me, but they're very nice people. Sometimes you just can talk people in. Obviously, when you already have like a gallery of big names, it's much easier. You go to someone and say, okay, you want to be, I don't know, between Barry Schwartz and Aleida Solis in a gallery of webinars. Most of the SEO community say, yeah, of course. Some
that's the luck that I have with my podcast too. They were one of my first guests in this podcast. Because they were at an event where I was creating a podcast. So that helped a lot with a lot of other speakers in my podcast. But I think it also helps that SEMrush is a big name, right?
Yeah, but I started before SEMrush, but nobody knew me. So when I go to SEMrush, I already hope for this. I even had actually, you don't remember, I think it was 2016, Rank Brain. You remember the Rank Brain article in Bloomberg? And we had a webinar with Google, with one of the Googler. And actually, Google was tricked and asked tricky question about ranking factor. And Google, one of the Google, I don't want to say name, but one of the Googler on video, on record, live said, okay, Rank Brain, links and content, there are ranking factor. It was the first time ever. Everyone knew that. But it was first time ever Google on a record said it. So I didn't really care much. So I went to sleep, woke up, click on the YouTube and thought 30,000 views. Why? Because Boris was watching it, and Boris was just wrote a small article that Google admit ranking for links. Content was less controversial, but Google admit links as a ranking factor, and everyone click and just watch it. So, and it was before SEMrush. But yes, you're absolutely right. You're working for SEMrush, which is one of the niche, but leader in this niche. Everyone knows you. It's much easier. You go to someone and say, Gerald, do you want to be on the SEMrush webinar? Most of the people say yes. Some people would ask for pay, and I just bluntly refuse whatever, because I said, you open a Pandora box and you have to pay and pay, because it's such a small, it's reasonably big, but small in terms of communication community. So if I pay someone tomorrow for being just guest on a webinar, rest of the world would know that. And next time I talk to someone, so I say, okay, you paid Michael, why don't you pay me?
Yeah, exactly. And do you still think that webinars are a good way to generate leads in 2023? Because, of course, we have the trend of more content and video on demand. Webinars are live in most cases, I think.
Yeah, so we very well. I love live webinars. Why? Because it's easy to do. It sounds kind of controversial, but it is. You probably should know about it, because when it's not live webinar, everyone expected the video will be very dynamic without this kind of things, and very and a good quality. I'm not saying we are for bad quality. Of course, we tried our best to get it, but sometimes it's difficult. So people, okay, I have a busy road here, so I can't stop traffic here, and I can't move anywhere else. And it's a normal situation. People doing most of the webinars from their offices or home. So it's never Hollywood quality. When it's live, people kind of take it easier, because they understand it's live. They can see people, they can see speaker can react to your question or your comment, and say, yeah, okay, it's live. But when you watch a recording, then quality is not great. All these kind of things. So if you can't really get studio quality, can't get your speakers in the studio and everything, live is absolutely the best way. In terms of lead generation, webinar is a good tool for lead generation. But as I said, for me, it's never the main goal. For me, it's always the main goal is influencer marketing. So basically, I want to get closer to influencer. I want to establish a relationship, maybe start, maybe continue, or something, especially before webinar and after that. During the webinar, it's just a webinar, but before the webinar, you can chat. After the webinar, you can chat. And for me, when people ask about KPI, I would say, if this influencer called me after the webinar, say, can we do another one? This is my KPI. Yeah. This is what I'm trying to achieve. But you're absolutely right. There are several goals, and of course, lead generation would be one of the goals. But for example, when I moved to Duda, obviously I use my connection in SEO with SEO people, and I brought some SEO webinars. Some SEO webinars were actually converted without my help, converted into search engine land articles, because we were talking about something. And would it help lead generation for Duda? No, it won't. Because it's for example, we're talking about index now, or Bing, or we're talking rendering, how Google rendering. It's not really that potential client, which are, for example, a digital agency who are looking for CMS and site builder, would be extremely interested in this. So it will bring me direct lead. No, it's more about brand awareness. I actually prefer brand recognition, to be honest, and it's more about creating a loyal audience. So you create loyal audience, which is two tiers loyal audience. The low ones, people who are watching you, and who might be interested in Google rendering, probably
Yeah,
some
so
kind of.
more like content marketing, demand generation, brand awareness, like you mentioned. But I think most companies are doing it for lead generation, right? And they become a bit too commercial maybe in the webinar.
I probably would agree with you, even I don't have any statistics to say most of the company or less of the company, but a lot of companies think it's just lead generation, which is not too bad if they still give valuable and useful content. The major mistake would be to think it's a good selling instrument, selling tool for cold sale. So you try to attract people talking about, I don't know, something which people might be interested. And instead of that, every 15 minutes, you try to say, yeah, but our tool is fantastically. And if you buy it, you use everything will be so. This is very, very, very bad idea. It's like, for example, if I would announce webinar about cryogen physics of low temperature, and instead of during the webinar, I would try to sell my fridges.
Yeah, I have been to a few webinars a few years ago, and I don't do it very often, to be honest. But the ones that I watched were very commercial. So I think that's a bit of my idea of how webinars are. But of course, you don't have to do that, and it can be very valuable and a big part of content marketing.
Yeah, you should attend a couple of our webinars. So, for example, we had a webinar, kind of historical webinar from historical point of view, Google updates, announced, non-announced, and history of Google updates. And we have Google's John Mueller there, and also Barry Schwartz and Mary Haynes. And we didn't sell anything, because what can you sell? But if you look through the people who registered, mostly SEO experts. And it was not very practical. So lead generation wasn't an idea. The idea was to say, okay, people watch it and see Google there and see two big name in SEO. And I said, who's doing the webinar? Duda? What is Duda? Yeah. So this is the idea.
But then, because on your LinkedIn, I also saw that you did a lot of roundtable sessions. I think what you are describing right now is it's more a live podcast or a round table. It's less scripted, right?
It's not scripted. And here I would like to make a very, very clear, because it's so often we're talking about, and people using very, very randomly webinar, live stream, or podcast. And I have my understanding, and my understanding webinar and podcast are very, very different animals. Why? Because webinar is always visual. So there is no idea to convert it to just only audio podcast, so people can listen during driving a car or anything. And because of that, webinar can have like several people talking, and webinar always have visual slides, video, all these kind of things. Podcast cannot afford it. Why? Because we made experiments at SEMrush. We had 4 people in a podcast, and it's horrible, because it's so, okay, for me it's easy. I'm on a podcast. I understand what's going on. But for somebody who just listening in audio, it would be so difficult to distinguish between 4 people, especially if they're 4 men or 4 women. For women, for example, it's impossible. So it makes it very, very difficult to listen. So you have to stick with 2 people, even better if the voices are very, very different. With 2 people, you can't use visuals, because now I can just do all the things with my hands, but people cannot see it, unfortunately. Or for example, I can bring you some charts or some pictures, some funny picture, maybe some video, or my cat can go and just say something about it. But obviously, it's all good for webinar. So webinar and podcast are very different. Anyway, because technology right now is so
but
easy to.
you don't have to have 4 people in the webinar, right? So to give you an example, the podcast with Lily Ray and Aleida Solis that I talked about, it was one episode about the helpful content update. It just came out, so I asked both of them to talk with me about the impact of the update, the first results. And it was a podcast, but it's also on YouTube. But it could have been a webinar, right? Because it's
Of course
just
it
the
could
three of
have
us,
been.
and they were just sharing. They have a different voice and accent. So yeah,
Okay, yeah, I know them both very well and personally, and of course, when I would listen, I would never mix Aleida Solis with Lily Ray. But some people who don't really know that much, they might mix it. So my understanding is better to stay two people on a podcast, makes it much easier. Of course, you could make it a webinar with three of you, Ray and Aleida, but probably in that case, you would, if I would be doing it, I would ask both of them or one of them. Do a few slides, not necessarily 45 minutes presentation, something like that, but a few slides. But because on a vision, when people are watching it, usually people expect something visual, not only faces.
yeah,
It's why my experience, because technology is here, and for you it's so easy to do video and audio. It's easy, why not? My experience, it very rarely works both of them. It's usually one or another, because you have to adapt your format for either pure audio or for video, and it doesn't matter.
yeah. And so you're not a big fan of a PowerPoint webinar, right? If I hear what you are saying, or is it also a good format to just go through the
I
story?
think it's a great format when, for example, we use it usually for two cases. First is very basic. Whenever we use the word basic, we already burned about this. We use essential because people don't want consider themselves basic. Yeah, so we use essential. So for example, you're talking about very essential. So at the end of this month, we will have a keyword research, blah blah blah. Very essential for people who never done it before. In this case, we only have one moderator, one guest, and we have slides. So just to explain things, because people just, if you put more people, put different ideas, it will confuse people who never heard about it. So it's either for very beginners or sometimes it's very technical. I don't know if you remember a few years ago, it was everyone were moving from HTTP to HTTPS. And it was, well, you have to do this and this and this and this. Don't forget about that. Do it this way, that. So for this technical, I would prefer one speaker and the slides were explaining every single step, what to do, what not to do,
Yep.
and just go this way. So yeah, so
I agree.
Use it.
And when when we go back to the influencer part, how do you reach out to them? It's a little bit like link building, right? So you can do a lot of things to have more success and to make them say yes.
Yeah, but how do you reach people? Well, you usually don't go on the street, just stop anyone, just start talking. You always first you try to build a relationship with your influencer. So, for example, you can go for quantity or for quality. You can have in your database 2,000 influencers, but it means if you have one member or you have I don't know 2 or 3 members of a team, it's impossible to build up a relationship with 2,000 people. Or you can build up relationship with say 20. And another 100 with less relationship, but still you know people and everything. The easiest way to approach the new one is through the introduction. So, for example, I know you,
Yep.
and you know someone, but not just someone is your LinkedIn friend, because we know what LinkedIn friend it means absolutely nothing. But someone you talk or you done some things, and you know me, and you already done things or we're in process things with you. So I ask Gerald, can you introduce me to Michael, and you are usually ask what you want from Michael. I say, oh, I want Michael for this webinar about that and that and that. And I said, yeah, why not? And you introduce me, and usually it works straightforward. Not everyone understands it, even within big companies. I remember when I joined SEMrush, the culture was, give me email of a lady sales.
Yeah.
I said, look, a lady sales is getting every day like 100 unsolicited email. She might not just notice your email. It should be a different way. If I introduce you to her, I can't guarantee, but probably she will reply. So it's
Yeah, I
not.
like that. And because of you, I had contact with Jason Barnard to record a podcast with him.
Yeah, how it works in this industry, probably in many other industries as well, but in this industry, it's very important who do you know and who knows you.
I agree. So you did more than 500 webinars at the end of 2020, I think. I saw it on your LinkedIn. What are
probably 500? I've done 500 for SEMrush. Before that, I've done another 100, and now I've probably done another 100 for Duda or similar.
You are a webinar king. So what are the biggest takeaways? Can you give some tips for people who haven't done any and want to start with it? What are the things you learned?
Okay, first one is a philosophical one. The second one is very practical. Philosophical one is you have to tell yourself, well, don't tell your boss or anyone, yourself why you're doing this webinar. And if your answer is, I can do it because I do it because I can, technology is here, it's easy and everything, then maybe you have to think again. Because if there is no very clear goal why you're doing this webinar, unless you just pay for doing it, and then you do, okay? You probably shouldn't do it or should reconsider. So that's
I have a quick question about that part, because you mentioned that the relationship is very important for you, more important than leads. And I can also imagine that the fact that your guest in the webinar or the influencers might share it, that part is very important for you, right?
Yeah, of course. Yes,
so
sure.
do you make agreements with them about it, or do you just hope they will share it, or what is your approach for that?
My approach for that is to make them as much comfortable during the webinar as possible, to let them speak out all their ideas, and usually it brings up that they like recordings, they like what's, because they said this and they said this and they said this. And it's kind of softly push them to share.
Yeah, because when I look at my own podcast, I think maybe 50% of the guests I have also share it with their own followers on social media, but a lot of them also don't. I'm not sure why, and of course I can't force them to do it. I always hope that they will do it. But I think there are a lot of things that you can do to improve the chance that they share it, right?
Yeah, okay. Second advice is very practical, but maybe people find it not. I wanted to write it over the wall, but we are renting a flat in Valencia. I don't think they will be very happy. Only work with people who value you, who like to work with you. This is maybe partial answer to your question. So you work with people who see value in it, and which means they probably will push it as well. I've done so many webinars of great, good, mediocre, and horrible ones, obviously. And yes, some people they don't share. They do. Why? Because they don't. I think because they don't value. Okay, they've done it for some reason. Whatever reasons they are, or they've done it, but they don't value. For example, the horrible little Duda. I don't know. I want to just do it for I don't know for Hollywood. I only do for CNN. This one I'm ashamed. Yeah, don't do webinar with people like that. First, it's so difficult because it's so difficult to pull them, and they're always late. Everything, all this trouble. But at the end of the day, they don't really like. They don't value. They won't share. They won't help you. So don't do it. Even if it's a huge figure. If it's a Lady Gaga, but she doesn't want to do it with you, just don't.
All right, great tip. What is your favorite platform to record webinars?
Okay, my platform at the end is YouTube, because YouTube is such a powerful thing. But we use right now we use StreamYard to stream it straight to YouTube.
Yep.
Before that, because as I mentioned, I started 2015. We use Hangout, Google Hangout on air. They're all streamer, but they stopped doing it. Stop supporting it how many years ago. Right now, there are plenty platforms like Easy Streaming, less sophisticated than your one probably. We use StreamYard, we love StreamYard, it's very intuitive. And I think it's very good, but maybe not very sophisticated.
And then when we go to the promotion part, what are all the tactics or channels you use to promote your webinar, to get people to
Okay, that would be a third very important practical advice. For good webinar, you need a lot of people, not only just to show numbers, but to show engagement and everything, to have a lot of people, besides everything, besides topic, and besides people, you need to share it. And the best for webinar, for registration is email. People think email probably is the old one, and email probably for old people, but it's not. It's absolutely the best so far, absolutely champion for registration. So social, even people like ladies with 100 or something thousand followers or body shorts, when we're doing webinar with them, and they share it on Twitter, you get maybe 5-10 registration. But you send your email for a few thousand, of course, a few thousand good list, motivated list, not just old zombie list, and you get hundreds of registration.
But then you should have an email list. Some people don't have a big list yet.
If you don't have a big list, the very little you can do if you don't have money. If you have money, paid traffic also can bring you a lot. But usually we notice that paid traffic, so there is, for example, attendance rate. So it's how many people out of registration really attend. So our average is about 30%, and I think it's more or less average for...
So 60% isn't coming.
30%.
30% isn't coming.
70% is not coming on a live. Yes, unfortunately. But when it's paid, it's half of it, like 15%.
Yeah.
Because people are registered through the paid. They're kind of cold people. They don't know anything about you. Okay, they thought, interesting webinar, I registered. But probability they will come would be 15% or something. So there is a big difference. But obviously, if you put enough money and you're doing it regularly, then you will have reasonable list eventually, and you can work with that. But it takes time.
Yeah, indeed. So, and we talked a little bit about goals, about KPIs. And I understand what you are saying, that the brand awareness part is very important, and the fact that you build a relationship with the influencers. But I can imagine that your manager wasn't happy with that part. They want to have hard KPIs or goals or see other things.
True. Yes. Of course, every marketing and everything is all about counting money, actually. And influencer marketing could become a different thing. So as there is influencer marketing where you just find an influencer, give him your product, make a video or picture, put it in Instagram usually, and pay this influencer some money. It's one thing. We're doing completely different, and I call this influencers PPC style influencer marketing, and we do SEO style influencer marketing. We're trying to establish a relationship, which is a long way and everything. But for example, the PPC way will stop as soon as you stop paying, obviously. And SEO, you probably establish it, and it goes. The major problem for me or for people who are doing it is so difficult to attribute or even track this kind of things. Because, for example, you have a lot of direct traffic, and I can tell my boss a part of this direct traffic because people just genuinely share your brand and everything, and probably I would be right. But I can't give an evidence, unfortunately. And unfortunately, there's no good attribution model or techniques. So yeah, it is a problem. It's a huge problem for me. How I go about, well, you still get something. So for example, after first, I think 6 or 7 months doing webinar for Duda, we had 6, I can't remember, 5 or 6 articles in a huge resources like search engine journal. And some of them were connected with the webinar. Some of them were because of influencer marketing, because we know people, because we connect to different, all these kind of funny things. Oh, funny or not funny. So for example, when we done a webinar with Bing, and Bing was prepared index now protocol, but it wasn't officially published. And actually in the private conversation, they told us and offer us if we want to join it before they announce it. Yeah. And Duda, we put our engineer with business engineers and Duda joined before it was announced. And when they announced, Duda was the only one CMS who already joined Index because nobody knew. Okay, somebody knew, but we were absolutely first. And which means Bing blog, every time talking about Index now, they mention us.
That's
Because we
very valuable.
Yeah, fantastic for us. So obviously, I pick it, come to my boss, see what this is what we've done, and I started it. So this kind of anecdotal evidence. Unfortunately, I wish it would be some kind of attribution model, and we can some kind of very very difficult and complicated, and we can put the name and say, oh, 24. When I say, well, see, 24. But it's not.
So you need a little bit of luck. I had a podcast a few weeks ago with a famous Dutch radio DJ. And he said something about radio frequencies in the Netherlands. And a few radio websites were picking it up and writing about it. And I didn't even ask them. I didn't send them the article or the podcast. They just found it, listened to it, and used some quotes from the podcast. And I think... Yeah. Do you actively look for that, or is it just luck?
I think it's luck, but obviously, if you bring in people who might say something, like Google, for example, you bring Google, and it's very probably if Google says something interesting, valuable, it probably will be after that amplified by other people. Otherwise, yeah, it is a lot, but obviously if you're doing some very basic webinar on the basic things, it's very unlikely you will go viral.
And in the beginning of our conversation, we talked a little bit about that there is a trend of watching video on demand. Do you see that the effectiveness of webinars is better or worse than, let's say, 5 or 6 years ago? Or is it about the same?
You're talking about on demand or?
No, sorry. Because of the trend of video on demand, and maybe also because of the trend that, well, I think a lot of companies moved their event budget when COVID started also to webinars. And I think a lot of extra companies are doing webinars compared to maybe 6 years ago. So is it still... Do you still get the same effect from a webinar as you did 6 years ago? Or is it, are the results better or worse?
I think it's much more difficult to do webinars now because what you said, everyone is doing a webinar right now, especially COVID. I remember when the COVID, what happened, it was up. So because when it stops, everyone goes online, and obviously people go to who already were established. But after that, it went down because it was so many of them, and people were so tired. So sometimes it's a good thing and a bad thing. But generally speaking, with technology development and making webinar is easy to make, it is more and more difficult to stick out. But if you establish player, it makes it really, wind goes into yourself because you establish players. So people probably tend to go to established.
Yep,
So
exactly.
it's probably much more difficult to start now than it was 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah. Do you have one big takeaway for B2B companies who never done a webinar but might be interesting in starting with it? What should they remember from our podcast?
Yeah, okay. I think as everything else, if they want to start with, they need to use professional help. Because it looks like it's very, very easy to do webinar. It's very easy, buy software, go and start doing it. But there are small things which you get with experience and everything. So everyone would want to start. And single webinar never change your life. So if you're doing webinars, you have to do it regular based.
Yep.
So if you into it, you probably should use professional help, which sounds like psychiatric help. It's not what I mean. You need to use someone who's done it. I'm not trying to sell myself. But someone who knows things that will save you a lot of time. But it's probably for everything. If it's the same for podcasts, or the same for absolutely everything.
Yep.
Use professionals, even if it seems so easy.
Can people hire you to get help with this?
I can't consult people. I don't think I'm going to stay because I have a full-time job, but I can help. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm absolutely open to help. I'm interested in doing this kind of things.
All right. Thanks a lot. Really liked the conversation. Interesting. Yeah, thanks and have a nice day.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Yes.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Inbound4Cast. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or in your favorite podcast app.